Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Colleen, and if you haven't been here before, I'm glad you found me today, and I hope that you enjoy this video that I'm going to put together. So what I'm working on today is appetizers from the 60s and 70s. Now some of them may go back farther than that, but that's about the area that I remember them being in. So I have 4 appetizers that you can make, like do all the work for, the preparation for, in under 30 minutes. So these, if you're kind of an old-fashioned person, these could be wonderful for you. And if you're just looking for something different and you're a younger person, this may be something you had never even considered. So I'm going to gather up the ingredients for the first of the dishes, and I will be back right after this. So the first 2 of these dishes, there's 2 of these dishes that need to be cooked. The other 2 do not. Better think about what I'm saying. No, that's not true. 3 of them need to be cooked. 1 of them does not. First one I'm going to make is just a mushroom dish. I'm going to check these mushrooms. I'm going to clean any dirt that may be on them. If their stems look sad, I am going to cut them off. I don't want to wash these mushrooms. They definitely will not be as good if you get them all sucking up all the water. So don't do that. Mushroom dishes for appetizers for dinners were very popular in the 60s and 70s. Mushrooms were a thing, or at least this kind of mushroom that were bought from the store, were pretty dear, and so you only brought them out for special occasions. These days, with so many growers growing them, mushrooms can be purchased and used quite quickly. So another one of the advantages to living in the times that we lived in. So they generally, most dinner parties or gatherings had, you know, a couple of dishes, but the women who worked in the kitchens, and it was mostly women who worked in the kitchens in the 60s and 70s, also didn't have anywhere near the amount of gadgets and gewgaws that we have to make cooking in our kitchens easier. So they definitely didn't want to burden themselves with too much extra stuff, because as you can imagine, back in the 60s and 70s, there was always a dessert to be had with every meal. Even pretty much every day meal, there was some sort of a dessert or a fruit that was served. My grandmother made sure that we had some fruit with our lunch, and as well as having some sort of a dessert. It could have just been fruit again, but we had it for dinner as well. And that came out of those times after the food guide came out, and everybody said, well, you need to be eating this way. And women were just doing their best to keep up to it. Now there's a couple of these that are pretty big. I think I'll cut in half. But for the most part, they will definitely shrink some, and so I don't want to cut them in too small pieces. Now these are all going into my crock pot. I have a jumbo crock pot. I'm going to have to go to Goodwill and see if I can find something that's a little more appropriate for having 3 people in the house. Okay, step 1, done. Step 2. I have here a ½ cup or 1 stick of butter that I'm just going to pour over the mushrooms. And then I am going to give them a stir in the crock pot. Make sure they are all coated with the butter. And then I'm going to add a packet of ranch dressing. Now, I'm reasonably certain the dry ranch dressing wouldn't have been used, but it would have been the equivalent, I'm sure, that women had packets or had their own mixes that they used, and they ripped them out for events just like this. So there we go. That is it. It's going to go into the crock pot for 2 hours on high, or you could leave it for 4 hours on low. That's all there is to it. And this is a delicious dish that was sent to me by one of our viewers. So thank you so much. You sent this to me last year when I posted the 3 old-fashioned appetizers. So I appreciate it. A shout out to you, and I'm sure we're going to enjoy these very much. Now, to get the next recipe going, I'm going to use my Instant Pot. And it's how I boil eggs, because we're going to make some deviled eggs. These were not only super popular back in the 50s or the 60s and the 70s, but still today, if I bring these to a family gathering, they're one of the first things to be gone. They're simple, they're tasty, and it's something that people reach for because they have that memory of having them on the table for special occasions, and you don't want to be left out. So this is a way to start. So I'm going to put a cup of water in my Instant Pot, and then I'm going to add 6 eggs to the pot, which will be enough to make 12 finished deviled eggs. These are going to go into the Instant Pot on pressure cook for 9 minutes, because these are extra large eggs. And then I'm going to do an instant release and dump them into a sink full of ice cold water so that I can get them to slip from the shells without you know, the problem there is with peeling eggs. Usually this works if you do them in the Instant Pot. So there, I have these mushrooms on the go, and there goes my Instant Pot to cook the eggs. So that's 2 dishes down. These will require a little more. All these are going to require is toothpicks in them when they're done. So pretty easy. So let's move on to the next dish. So this dish, many of you probably will recognize, but I haven't seen it around at a party recently, so I thought it might be a good one to remind you about, and that is stuffed celery. Now, I remember my mother making this. She made it with Cheese Whiz, and it was something that was easy for us kids to also make, because it really just required celery and Cheese Whiz. Today we're going to, I don't want to say take it to the next level, because people who love Cheese Whiz and love the combination aren't going to be thrilled about you changing up the recipe. So I've got 6 pieces of celery here, and I'm just going to give them a wipe. I washed the celery previously. I'm just going to give them a wipe because we want them to be dry, where we're trying to keep the cheese in them. And so just give them all a good dry, because otherwise they don't like to hang on to the cheese. Grab a knife here, and I have to put in them, rather than Cheese Whiz, I'm going to fancy it up just a bit. Same old celery, but I'm going to use the Boursin, well, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but this right here, and this one happens to be garlic and fine herb, and I think this will just take it up to the next level. Now, Cheese Whiz wasn't the only thing that was used in these dishes. Of course, you could pipe in dressings that you made, or fillings that you made with cream cheese, and say a bit of garlic and some really finely chopped peppers. You could add cream cheese again and some crab meat. I remember people doing that, and it made it a little extra fancy. I just noticed I've got a bad spot on this one. I thought I looked well, but I'm going to take that little brown spot off. And so there's no end to the amount of things you could stuff in a piece of celery. And this is something that's easy for people to just pick up and eat without making a mess all over themselves or all over your kitchen or wherever it is you're hosting them. And you can, I'm not sure if you could pipe this. I guess you could with a big enough tip on your piping bag. But this is how I'm going to do it. Mostly, as I said before, they didn't have time to make things too fancy, and they didn't have piping bags with disposable bags and fancy tips. They had aluminum. I think they were made of aluminum, most of them, but they were metal at any rate. Cake decorating sets. And they had like a plunger you pushed in, kind of like a needle, like a syringe. And it had a metal tip that was on the, on the bottom of it, or on the end you were going to use, the working end. And it could be quite hard to use, quite hard on the hands. So I have still seen some around, but they're made of plastic now. But most people don't go to all that trouble. They have their few cake decorating tips that they really enjoy using, and they have bags that are disposable. So look at that. We whipped that up in no time flat. And trust me when I say this would be a hit at any party. After they try the first bite, they're going to be hooked. So now on to the last of the dishes. Okay, the eggs are in the sink cooling, and I am going to get on to the last of the dishes. We are going to make snakes in a blanket. Now, you may very well have heard of pigs in a blanket, which is like a cocktail wiener or a full-on old-fashioned wiener that's been cut up in the Pillsbury Crescent rolls. But this is an old recipe, and it's one that's pretty simple to make. At least we hope this is all going to come apart properly and not give us too much issue. So you separate your dough into its triangles. I'm just doing it right here on my clean countertop. And make sure that you try and maintain the integrity of the triangle, because it's important in this one. And we need some asparagus for this, and I am going to cut the asparagus off at the place where it gets tough. You can use that in soups and stews or whatever you like, but we don't need it right there. Maybe I'll try and get all 8 of them out here onto the board. Make it a little easier so we can just do it assembly line style. Now these can be made in lots of different ways. You can use your imagination. You can use different kinds of vegetables in here. I think the main part of the dish is the crescent roll and cheese, and it does require quite a bit of cheese. The recipe: 4 pieces of Swiss cheese slices and 4 slices of mozzarella. And I have left these out just to warm a little, to make them a little more pliable, so that when we roll them, there's less cracking going on. Now you want to cut these pieces in half, and cut them all in half. And this is how they assemble. So you take a piece of cheese. Oh wait, first let's brush them all with a little bit of oil. And Then we'll go to the cheese. This is a more fancy looking one, I guess, and goes together quite quickly. So cheese, 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 and just continue on doing that. Actually, I'm going to do it kind of the style like an assembly line. Whoops, rip that one. That won't make a world of difference. And I have my oven preheating to 350 degrees. I think it's done that now. And I heard it beep a minute ago. And these are going to be in the oven for 13 to 18 minutes, or until the dough, the crescent roll, is a golden brown and the asparagus has had a chance to cook through. Now we simply lay a piece of asparagus or the snake on top of the cheese, and we are going to roll the rest of the crescent roll around it. So you don't want to get, you want to maintain, now can you see that? So it makes a nice little bundle, and you just carry on doing that until you have them all completed and on the pan. And you want to try and maintain that little parcel look. It's nice if the asparagus is long enough, the snake part, that it sticks out on either end. That one could have been a little tighter, I suspect, because my snake wanted to fall out. But once the cheese melts, the snake won't be going anywhere. And trying to maintain the shape a little bit so that it makes for a pretty presentation. I wanted to say thank you to all my viewers out there who have been patient with me in the last little while as I've been experiencing camera problems and problems with my mouth, because it seems I'm having trouble getting the words out correctly. And it's nice to know that you don't mind that I don't edit that stuff out, or at least I haven't read anybody that was worried about that. And the last one now, going on to the pan. There we go, all rolled up, nice little bundle. This is what they look like. Now, I'm just going to put these into the oven and I'm going to bake them, and when they come out of the oven, I am going to, I want to make sure that they're about 2 inches apart. I'm going to brush them with oil. Actually, maybe I'll do that first. I'm going to brush them with a little bit of oil. I don't think it matters which way this goes, so this is what I'm going to do. This is my interpretation of the recipe. And then we're going to add just a little bit, just the tiniest little bit of Italian seasoning to the tops. Just a sprinkle. And there we go. Into the oven they go, and I'll be back when they're done. Well folks, fresh out of the oven, here are our snakes in blankets. And I wish you could smell it in here, it's delicious. So I will set them aside to cool a little bit, and then I'm going to trim them because they've grown together and get them ready. I'm going to set them aside right now, and we'll get the deviled eggs finished off. You don't have to put your eggs into an Instant Pot in order to cook them well and make them come out of their skins, but it certainly does help. And you could do this traditionally, like absolutely put them in a pot and boil them as you have always done, and that would be fine too. So I'm going to cut these all in half and scoop out the inner yolk. I'm done getting them all in half. And put the yolk into a separate bowl because we're just going to add a few things to it. And honestly, there's so many things you can do to a deviled egg. You could add bacon. You could, I've seen some made with avocado now. There's just so many ways to spice them up and pep them up and just make them a little different. Our imagination is really the only thing that would slow us down when it comes to a lot of these recipes. So don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone or try something that's new, because we often find great things when we're doing that. Okay, so there are my egg halves. Now I'm just going to use a fork to mash up the yolk. We want these egg yolks to be really well mashed up, because we're going to create basically a paste that's going to go back into the egg white. And I'm just going to add some mayonnaise to the mix and a little bit of mustard. Now you can leave this out. I also sometimes add pickle juice or relish to it. You could add hot sauce to it. You don't need much mustard. It will go a long ways in there. I'm leaving these pretty simple, but I don't want you to think that this is the only way to do it. Now, I'm going to get rid of the fork. I'm going to add just a small shake of salt. If you're on a salt-restricted diet, leave it out. You don't need to have it in there. And then I'm just going to, by the teaspoonful, I'm going to get you here centered, I'm just going to put some of this fill back into each of these. And sometimes you'll end up with one that's over full or ones that are under full. So you might have to go back and do a little work. You can also use your piping bag here and pipe the treats back into the egg white. It's another way that you could do it. And then you can be a little fancier with it. So you could take a recipe from the 50s and 60s and fancy it up so that you could serve it to your friends today. But I feel like deviled eggs is something that crosses the cultures, that kids today know about deviled eggs as much as we did in our day. It's one of the few specialty foods that stuck around. Okay, there we go for that. Now the last thing I'm going to do for the deviled eggs is just add a little shake. I have some smoked paprika. Just going to add a little shake to the top. You don't have to do that either. You could also add a little bit of chives or onion to the top of this. And there you go. I'm going to set this aside. It's time for me to assemble this all onto a tray so that you can see it. And I hope that you've enjoyed this video. There you go, folks. It didn't take me very long. There was some cooking involved, but it didn't take me very long to put together a great bunch of appetizers for any evening get-together. Some of them are bigger, like a meal, And some of them are just bites, like off a toothpick. And all of them could be eaten cold, so you could make them in advance. Of course, these are better warm, but if you had all your little bundles ready, then all you would have to do is cook them at the last minute and you'd be set. So I put this all on my cutting board. I covered with aluminum foil in the tradition that was the 60s and 70s, because aluminum foil, or tin foil as we called it back in the day, was something that covered up our poor breadboards. Because most of us didn't have a great breadboard, we used them for real life. And so this was how we went to parties. So folks, I hope that you've enjoyed coming along with me today while I've made these 4 old-fashioned appetizers for your party season, or for any time that you need an appetizer. And if you've enjoyed what you saw today, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't, liking the video, commenting below. I love to hear from everybody. And you can help me most by sharing this on your social media. So take care, everybody. I hope that you're having a fantastic day and that the weekend ahead treats you well. Take care. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.